Brave the storms of life with these 7 thought-provoking Stoic quotes. Are you ready to take on life's challenges with a Stoic mindset? The Stoic philosophy, which emphasizes the importance of living according to the 4 cardinal virtues of courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance, offers valuable guidance for facing difficult situations. According to the Stoics, the only source of good or bad in our lives is our own internal state, and by taking full responsibility for our own well-being, we can become resilient to external setbacks and hardships. So let's dive into these 7 pearls of wisdom and see how we can apply them to our own lives. 1. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. The quality of our thoughts refers to their positivity or negativity, and how much they align with our values and goals. When we have positive and aligned thoughts, we are more likely to feel satisfied and content with our life. On the other hand, when our thoughts are negative and misaligned, we are more likely to feel stressed, anxious, and unhappy. If we want to improve our happiness, we should focus on cultivating positive and aligned thoughts and let go of negative and misaligned thoughts. 2. You become what you give your attention to. Epictetus. The things we give our attention to, whether they be thoughts, experiences, or people, have a significant impact on our lives and our behavior. By focusing on positive and productive things, we can improve our mindset and become more positive, successful, and fulfilled individuals. On the other hand, by giving our attention to negative or unproductive things, we risk becoming negative, unproductive, and unhappy. The importance of being mindful of where we direct our attention and to be intentional about giving our attention to things that will benefit us in the long run. 3. A gem cannot be polished without friction. Seneca. Just like a gemstone needs to be polished by friction to bring out its shine and beauty, we need to go through challenges in order to develop and improve ourselves. The quote implies that without these difficulties, we would not have the opportunities to grow and learn, to strengthen our character, and to test and prove ourselves. In other words, it's through the process of overcoming obstacles and facing challenges that we can become the best version of ourselves. The quote also suggests that difficulties should be accepted as normal and natural part of life, and instead of resisting them, we should use them to our advantage. 4. Stick with the situation at hand and ask, why is this so unbearable? Why can't I endure it? You'll be embarrassed to answer. Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius encourages us to confront our fears and difficulties head-on and to question why they are so unbearable to us. By focusing on the present situation and asking ourselves why we cannot endure it, we can gain perspective on the true nature of the problem and see that it might not be as bad as we initially thought. The quote implies that often our fears and difficulties stem from our own thoughts and perceptions rather than the actual situation. By questioning our own thoughts and beliefs, we can gain a sense of control over our emotions and reactions and realize that the problem is not as overwhelming as we thought it was. This can help us to be more resilient in the face of challenges and to develop a sense of self-awareness and introspection. 5. What I advise you to do is not to be unhappy before the crisis comes. Seneca. It advises us to not let the fear of potential problems create unhappiness in our present moments. The quote implies that by worrying about the future and anticipating problems, we risk allowing them to consume us emotionally and affect our current happiness. It also implies that by being mentally and emotionally prepared, we can face the difficulties with a clear mind and a positive attitude, which will help us to find solutions and overcome them more effectively. The quote is a reminder to focus on the present moment and to make the most of our time and energy, rather than wasting them on worry and fear of the future. It also serves as a reminder that we should be proactive and take actions to be better prepared for the future, but not at the cost of present happiness. 6. An angry man opens his mouth and shuts his eyes. Cato. The quote implies that when a person gets angry, he or she is more likely to speak without thinking, rather than listening and thinking through a situation. The quote highlights the idea that when we are angry, our emotional state can cloud our judgment, and we may say things or take actions that we later regret. It also implies that when one is angry, they tend to shut their eyes to reason, logic, and the perspective of others, making it harder to come to a resolution or understanding. Be mindful of our emotions and to take a step back and think before we speak or act, particularly when we are feeling angry. By being more aware of our emotional state and taking the time to think before we react, we can avoid making things worse and can instead find ways to resolve conflicts and communicate more effectively. 7. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. We create more suffering for ourselves in our minds than in the actual reality of a situation. The quote implies that our imagination can create worst-case scenarios and amplify our fears, making the situation seem much worse than it actually is. It also implies that our mind has the power to create unnecessary worries and anxieties, which can affect our emotional state and overall well-being. Our thoughts and perceptions have a great impact on how we experience a situation, and that we should try to see things as they are, not as we imagine them to be. By being aware of our thoughts and perceptions and reframing them in a more positive and realistic way, we can reduce the amount of suffering we experience and find ways to cope with difficult situations more effectively. It also encourages us to be mindful of our thoughts and try to avoid getting caught up in unnecessary worries and negative imaginings. The Stoic philosophy offers valuable guidance for facing the challenges of life. By focusing on the four cardinal virtues of courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance, and taking full responsibility for our own well-being, we can become more resilient to external setbacks and hardships. These 7 Stoic quotes were a reminder that our thoughts and perceptions have a great impact on how we experience a situation, and that we should try to see things as they are, not as we imagine them to be. It also encourages us to be mindful of our thoughts and try to avoid getting caught up in unnecessary worries.